be showing you how to analyze a lead sheet today. The lead sheet we're going to look at is a really famous one called Take the A Train. It's a really awesome jazz standard. It's very simple. It has an interesting scale in there as well that will sound really jazzy and exotic, I guess you could say, if you're just starting out. But the main idea of this video is to show you how to analyze a lead sheet, to look for sequences of chords that build up into something where you can use that sequence in a way to effectively support your solo. And that concept in this video is called a 2 minor 7, 5 7 to 1 major 7. Keep watching and I'll explain more. Alright, Take the A Train. This is a standard written by Duke Ellington and Billy Strayhorn. It's a really popular old classic jazz standard. What I have here is a lead sheet. The lead sheet will have many things on it, but the most important things that the lead sheet will have are chords and a melody. The first thing we need to do with anything that we look at is we need to identify what the key of the song is. So we can do that several ways. For this piece, we're going to look at the first chord of the tune. So it's a C. And we're going to also look at the last chord of the first phrase. And the first phrase ends here at the first ending. And it's also a C. We can also look at the end of the piece. What does the song end on? A C. We can also, after looking at that information, then we need to look at the key signature. The key signature would typically be between the clef and the time signature. And there's nothing there, which means the key of C. Now, what we want to do next is we're not going to worry about any of the notes in the melody. Right now, we're assuming that we already know the melody. The next step is to look at it and analyze the chords. Analyzing means to take a closer look at, to investigate, to look closer on something. And in a musical sense, to analyze chords means to figure out why these chords are here, what function do they have in the song, and as improvisers, what scales can we use over the chords. So, let's get started. The first chord we have is a C. That means we can just use a C major chord. I mean, you can write major here, or you can write Ionian. It's up to you. Ionian is a mode. It's the first mode, and it starts on the root. So if it's C Ionian, that means it's a C major scale. D Ionian is a D major scale. It just depends if you're familiar with this terminology or not. Now, the next chord is a little bit funny. We have a couple of things here. It says D7 flat 5. This D7 is a dominant 7. Look over here for a second. On this paper, I have staff lines and I also have a keyboard. It's really handy to have a keyboard when you're analyzing chords. It's going to help a lot because looking at blops on I don't know what a blop is, but a blot on a staff is kind of abstract. It's easier to look at notes on a keyboard for intervallic relationships, or the distance between notes. So we're going to spell it a D7. Our root is D, R for root. It's a major triad. So we have an F sharp in there. It's a major third. So we're going to go up 1, 2, 3, 4 half steps for our major third. So major third is 4 half steps or 4 semitones. Now we need to have the fifth, but this fifth is different. We're going to find the normal fifth first. So root, 2, 3, 4, 5. So A is the fifth. But this fifth is flatted. So now we're going to play an A flat instead. And we're going to write flat 5. So that way we know what it is. And then we have this is a dominant 7. This means that instead of going down a half step from the root of the chord, the D to C sharp, we're going to go down a whole step to the flat 7. So now it's a C natural, and this is our 7. So for a D7 flat 5, we've now spelled out D, F sharp, A flat, C natural. And that's how you spell out a D7 flat 5. The scale to use for a D7 flat 5, it's actually hidden in the chord itself. And this, if I were to analyze it, I mean, they know their business, they know what they're talking about, but this, in the melody, you can see E to G sharp. G sharp is 4. Root is 1, 2, 3, 4, and we have a raised 4th. That should set off some alarms to some people or some flags. A raised 4th equals Lydian. So this is a Lydian mode scale, meaning that the 4th is raised. And we also have a flat 7, so we call this Lydian flat 7. What that will look like with notes, we'll write it down real quick. So we have D, E is 2, 3, 4, we have our flat 5 and our 4, and then we have B, six, and then we have our 7. So this is the tricky part with what's written here. When we look at it this way, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, we have a big skip here. Okay, you can do two things. You could play this natural 5. You can, it's fine. I wouldn't suggest playing the B flat or the A sharp because that's a raised 5th, and that will clash a bit with this. So we want to play this scale. So I know this is flat 5, and this is why I don't like it. It's because it's really a sharp 4 or a sharp 11. So now we can play this scale with this is a Lydian flat 7. D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C, D. The next sequence is something I have a highlighter handy for. I'm using a highlighter just to emphasize its importance in the piece. And this is also the main concept of this video as well. Analyzing chords are really important to find out what scales you use, but there are lots and lots of chords on this page, but there's actually not as many scales as you would use to improvise on. What I mean is this. This D minor 7, if I were to write out or find the notes on the keyboard for a D minor 7, it would look like this. Root, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. That's my D minor 7. Well, I should have a B flat, but I'll show you why and not in a second. Then for a G7, it's a dominant scale. We have root, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, then 1. And then for C, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. Or root again. If you can look at this for a second, all these notes are the same. What this means is that I can play the same scale over 3 chords in a row. It can't be any 3 chords, and that's what I want to point out. There's a special combination at work here. There's a minor 7 to a dominant 7 to a major, and we're going to assume that's a major 7. And I'm going to highlight all of this. This combination, minor 7, dominant 7 to a major or a major 7, is called a II-7. The reason it's called a II-7 is because of the relationship of the notes to C. C is 1. We've established that. C is 1, or a capital I, a Roman numeral I. 2 minor 7 is D, or like this. G is 5, 7. Do you see now the connection? We can put numbers to all these notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, back to 1. So instead of using numbers, we're going to use Roman numerals because that's what people before us have figured out works the best to analyze music with. The reason we use Roman numerals is so that we can transpose easily for other instruments. Let's say I'm a C instrument and I have a 2-5-1 ending on a C. If I were to tell a baritone sax player, let's do a 2-5-1 in the key of concert C, that means that he's going to have to transpose. That means for his C, he's going to have to go to A. So instead of me saying it's going to be a D minor 7, G7, 1 major 7 for me, and for you it's going to be a B minor 7, E7, A major 7. Most people won't know how to transpose that quickly. But if you can tell people 2-5-1 in A, or in concert C rather, then they'll have to think, well, what's my key in relation to C? And they do the transposition. Back on track. We have a 2-5-1. We need to have a couple of things for it to be a 2-5-1. It needs to be a minor 7 to a dominant 7 to a major 7. That shows up here, and that's one reason why I've highlighted it. The other reason is the distance between the notes, or the chords rather. D to G is a fourth. We can go D, E, F, G. That's 4. We go up 4, and then G to C is a fourth up. G, A, B, C. Most people have 4 fingers and a thumb, so you can use your hand like this to count your intervals. It's a lot faster. And if you know your musical alphabet, it goes from A to G, A to G, A to G. It starts over. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, etc. So we only need to worry about a fourth. So most people have 4 fingers. So let's use this to count our interval. D, E, F, G. There's a fourth up, and it's minor 7 to dominant 7. Then G to C, G, A, B, C. There we go. That's a 2-5-1. The next thing I'm going to do with my pencil is I'm going to write on top here what scale I can use. And the best scale to use over a 2 minor 7 to 5-7 to 1 major 7 is the 1 major 7 scale. So I'm going to write C major 7. Or I could also write C major. Now here's one thing I need to explain. Yes, you can play a C major scale, but if you play a C major scale, C to C on a D minor 7, it's going to sound weird. Same thing with a G7. The reason is that this is a D minor 7. Remember when we looked at the notes? A D minor 7 is D, F, A, and C. These are the main chord tones that make up this chord. We want to highlight and feature these notes as much as possible to give the listener an idea of what chord is at the moment. Same thing for a G7. We want to feature the notes of a G7, which are G, B, D, F. Again, we want to feature these notes. Yes, we can use all the notes from C to C, but we want to feature these notes more than others. And then the same thing for a C. That one is easy because it's our 1. Let's look at this piece for more 2-5-1s. Now, we're going to skip past this and we're going to go to the second ending. So we have 2-5-1. And then we have 4. F is 4 up. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we have D7. So these ones are out, but we're going to write down the key for these guys, okay? So for F, we're going to use an F major scale, and that means it has a B flat in it. Most people actually don't mark their music. If you want to mark your music, go for it. No one's looking at your music. They just want to hear what it sounds like. Use a pencil, it's alright. Let's look at something real quick. In the second ending, there's a chord in parentheses here. It looks like it's a C7. Just like when we move G7 to C, this is a dominant to tonic resolution, 5 to 1. Now we have C, which is the home key, it's become a 5. So this is 5-7 to 1. So even here, we want to use a B flat. It's in parentheses, that means it's optional. But the reason why it's there is because on our second ending, we can have a stronger pull to what's coming up next, which is the 4, or F major scale. The next scale that we have is a D7. This scale, as well as the F, is out of the key of C. There's no B flats in the key of C. C is all white keys going up. D7 is also out of the question, or not out of the question. It's out of the key of C. Let me show you why. We're going to build a D7 scale. First note is D. Now we're going to go up the D major scale. This means that you have to do a bit of thinking. So let's think back to our D7 flat 5, or our Lydian flat 7 scale. We had D, E, F sharp because it's major, just like our G7 is major. Our third has to be major, so it's 4 half steps above D. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Keep building. Root, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And here's our root again. And because it's a D7, it's not a half step below. That would be a major 7th. We want a flat 7. So now we have our flat 7 there. So now for this D7, this scale, you can do two things. You can write F sharp, and that's your cue. If you know your modes, you can write Mixolydian. Mixolydian sounds like Lydian. The difference is that Lydian has a sharp 4. Mixolydian has a flat 7. This G7 is also Mixolydian because G, A, B, C, D, E, F natural, or F, yes, because it's supposed to be F sharp, so it's F natural to the root again, G. That's Mixolydian. So is this. Pretty much anytime you see a dominant 7, it can be Mixolydian. And look at the melody as well. The melody reflects the notes that we have in the chord. Here we have E to an F sharp. That tells us that we need to be emphasizing this F sharp to give the chord relevance to the listener. Let's go on. We have a D minor 7 to a G7, G7 flat 9 to a C. This almost looks like a 2-5-1, but there's a chord in between. And guess what? This is actually a 2-5-1. Let me explain why it is. First, I'm going to highlight it all. Now, this is a 2-5-1 because of the intervals. We have D minor 7 going up a fourth, D, E, F, G, to G7. G7 goes up a fourth to C eventually, G, A, B, C. We have a G7 flat 9. The reason the flat 9 is there is because of the melody. We have an A flat. Let me explain the 9 real quick. 9 comes from the fact that it is a ninth above the root. We're going to spell it a G dominant 7 scale. Root, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7, or it's natural 7. And here's root again, but we're going to call it 8, and then A is 9. We can actually go all the way up to 13. If you were to think about this, G to A is just a second. G to C is just a fourth. So we have a second, a fourth, and a sixth above the root. But these extra notes should be added on top of what's already been established. So now that we have a flat 9, here's the cool thing that happens. We have an A in the G7 going to an A flat. Then we have the A flat going down to G, which is actually the fifth of the C scale. So this is why it doesn't really change the fact that this is a 2 minor 7, 5, 7, 1. Because this doesn't change. This is still a 5, 7. It just has a coloration to the note. It's adding a tension, not a tension, but like pay attention, but a T-E-N-S-I-O-N, tension, to the chord to give it some pull down to the melody, to give it some interesting sounds. If we keep analyzing the tune, we have a D minor 7, G7, C, D, E, F, G, G, A, B, C. Again, it's another 2 minor 7, 5, 7, 1. This may look like a lot of cat scratch, and that's okay, but let's actually think about this and write down what scales we have to know to play Take the A Train. In the beginning, we have C major scale. There's 1. We have D Lydian flat 7. That's 2. We have C major scale. Already covered that. And now we have C7 with the B flat, but that's also shared in F, so that's 3. An F major scale, or C mixolydian. Then we have a D7, which is a mixolydian scale, which is major third, flat 7. Then we have C major, covered that already. D Lydian is the second one we did. Then C major. There's only 4 scales to know, and they're not that different from each other. This tune is pretty simple. As you can tell, the melody is really repetitive. The chords are not very dramatic in their changes and adding lots of crazy 2/5s in there. So this is a good tune to start with on analyzing. I hope that this video has helped you in some way to improve your improvisational efforts. The best thing to do, honestly, is to practice. If you don't know a D7 flat 5 scale, just play it up and down. Once you get tired of playing D to D going up and down, start E to E, F sharp to F sharp, G to G, A to A, or go down your register, or go further up. Explore the range of your instrument. Don't just get locked in a 1 octave scale. That goes for all 4 chords that are in this song. Good luck, happy practicing!